Well, we're wide open sideways, and talk is cheap. We got the foot to the floor, we're gonna drive her in deep.
In the beginning, stock cars outran the police to deliver the hooch to our ancestors. So sweet. Are you ready for a trip down victory lane? Where Richard Petty's winnings were insane, and Dale Earnhardt put everyone to shame. Canadian Junior Handley is in the Hall of Fame. From the home of Canada's crown jewel, Casa Motor Speedway, live from Haldeman County, it's time for the Driver in Deep podcast. Are you ready? Well, we're wide open.
Wingnutsports.com is proud to present the Driver in Deep podcast with your host Alex and Mark. My name is Mark McSporin, and I'm here once again with my co-host Alex Nagy. What's going on today, Alex?
Thanks, Mark. Not a whole lot. Everything is great. I can't wait to introduce our next guest and dip inside of his world a little bit and maybe even see if we can share a few stories.
Yeah, me too. But before we get going, let's talk about our sponsor.
Well, apparently we don't have a sponsor yet.
No, Treg still hasn't returned my calls.
All right. Let's just get right to our guest.
Sounds good to me.
Our guest today is who I consider to be a big shooter in the industry, and he comes from the open wheel sports car, supercar, IndyCar, rallycross side of the motorsports field, and really there's too many series to mention. So hopefully today we'll touch on a bunch of them when we get chatting with him.
Yeah, I can't wait to meet this gentleman as well. From what you've told me and what I've read about him, he's one of the best and most well-respected individuals in his field.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm proud to call him my friend. He's somebody that I've learned a lot from and continue to do so today. Joining us from Indiana, we're happy to welcome the Chief Operating Officer of the famed Andretti Autosport, Rob Edwards. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Rob.
Hey. Hi, Alex. Hi, Mark.
Hey.
Good to spend some time chatting with you.
Yeah, welcome, Rob. It's nice to meet you, and welcome to Driver in Deep.
It's great to have you with us, Rob. I hope that you, Patty, and the girls are doing well, especially during these crazy times.
Yep, no, we are. It's it certainly adds a layer of complexity to everything that we do, right? Particularly since it's pretty hard to work on race cars from your home, so you have to figure out how to work in the workshop. And as Alex tugged on, right, there's a lot of things go on at Andretti Autosport. It's one of the bigger teams, so there's a lot of people to sort of manage and make sure that we can all do what we love, but do it safely and keep everyone healthy.
Absolutely. Alex, holy doodle, we have a lot to cover today. So why don't we just jump in and start with this. So Rob, you were born in America and went to school in England. What can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I didn't have much choice in the being born in America and growing up in England part, but I certainly the growing up in England part was instrumental in ending up where I've ended up now. I went to my first motor races at Brands Hatch and Silverstone back in the, I don't want to sound too old on this, so back in the mid to late 70s. I went to my first races at Brands Hatch and Silverstone.
So you were 5, Rob?
Sorry?
You were 5 then?
If he was 5, you were 10.
Hey, Alex, I've been 35 as long as you've known me. Just remember that, right? So,
no, I know.
So, I think motor racing is so much part of motorsport. In the States, there's so many choices, right? In England, motorsport's so much a front-running sport and so on, and so it was easy to get exposed to it. And I actually I took what's called a gap year between finishing school and going to college, and I was fortunate enough to manage to land a job as what they call a gopher for a guy called Neil Trundle, who was partners with Ron Dennis in Rondell. Prior to that, a gopher, for anyone doesn't know, is named because you go for this and you go for that and you go for whatever everyone wants you to go and get. But it was a great first taste of, what I call professional motor racing. Neil ran a team in Formula 2 with an American driver, Cliff Hansen. It's basically myself and two other guys, and we rode around all through Europe that summer. Raced up in Sweden, raced down in Sicily at Enna, and I guess from there I was, that was it. I had the bug, and wasn't sure probably before that experience what I wanted to do when I went to college, but that sowed the seeds, and I went to Reading University and studied engineering and mathematics, and that set me on the way.
So when you took engineering and mathematics, Rob, at that time, were you determined to get into motorsports? Or was that in your plans at all?
I would say at the time I made the decision to go to Reading, I wasn't. But by the time I stepped foot in my first engineering class, I very much was, based on that summer of working for Neil Trundle. And university or school in England is basically a 3-year school, and there's a final year project, a capstone project, if you will. There was a friend of mine that was like-minded, who had some contacts in motor racing. Most final year projects at Reading were whatever the professor's pet research project was. You were going to be the guy doing the grunt work for that. But Keir Kamatz, who's my friend there, and he and I had sort of a different mind, and we found one of the professors that was passionate about motor racing as well, and so we convinced him that instead of us doing his pet research project, that he should sponsor our pet research project, and went down the road from Reading to see Tiga cars, Howden Ganley and Tim Schenken. And we convinced them that they should give us a project, and that's what we spent our last year at school working on. So
that would have been in 1986, is that about right?
Would have been 82, 83, somewhere around there, 83, 84.
And at that time you started as a design engineer?
So when I finished at Reading, I wrote about 30 or 40 letters to motor racing teams asking for a job, and they all came back and said no. So
it's kind of like when I was looking for sponsors.
Yeah, exactly. We've all been there, right? So I went off to work for Rover Cars. It was a production car company in England at the time. And after I'd been there for about 6 months or 9 months or so, I wrote to the same 30 or 40 race car companies again and asked for a job. And about that time, gentleman Mike Coughlin, who was the chief designer at Tiga at the time, went off to start his career in Formula One at Tyrrell. And that meant that Howden was looking for a chief designer or someone who could push a pencil around a piece of paper. And I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time. And so he gave me my big chance. We'll always be grateful to him for that.
Awesome. So after that, you had a couple different other jobs in motorsports. I know we talked about them in the past, but really your biggest move at that point was probably when you went to Derek Walker Racing in 1993. Would you agree?
Yes, very much, in terms of setting me on my current path.
I mean, you didn't know it at the time for sure, but as it turns out, you're at Derek's for 16 years. Just for our listeners to understand the scope and the impact and reach you've had with different teams. I mean, when you're at Derek's, I know I'm probably going to miss some out, but I know you dealt with Canadian Scott Goodyear there, Robby Gordon, Gil de Ferran, Will Power, Bryan Herta, Sarah Fisher. I think towards the end, Tagliani. Talk a little bit about Derek, who I know is a real cool guy with an incredible background too, but couldn't go on forever about him. But talk a bit about your time at Derek's and at Walker Racing, and about Derek, and just how, I know there for a fact you're a race engineer, engineering manager, team manager. That's why you say, it turns out it was probably a huge, huge step. You didn't know it at the time, but 16 years at a famed company that has pretty diverse, and I know you did a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, Derek had so many opportunities, as you say, over 16 years with Derek. And I think you don't stay somewhere for 16 years, right, without the relationship working for everyone. And, I think prior to being with Derek, I'd been at MPTI out in California, and there'd been like 200 people there, and it was a big racing operation. And Paddy and I drove all the way across the country and turned up at Derek's shop, and it was about 15 people there or whatever. And Paddy hadn't been around racing very long, and she looked around and said, well, where's the rest of it? You've drugged me all the way across the country for this. And, 16 years later, we were both very happy with that. I think the thing with Derek is he was right. He ran a tight ship, and I'd say even now the lessons I've been able to put into practice since I left Derek are all very much based on the skills and the values and so on that I learned from him, and that it's easy to have a big budget in motor racing and waste it and not make the best of it. You're likely to be around in business and in racing a lot longer if you know how to make a small budget pay for the important things and look after a little bit to save for a rainy day. And so, as you say, I started as a race engineer. When Gil came on board in '97, became engineering manager and did a lot of wind tunnel testing and R&D. And somewhere around that time, Ron Meadows had joined us from England as team manager, and was with us for 2 or 3 years, and then looked to go back to England again. And now obviously is the sporting director at Mercedes F1, so someone else that benefited from the school of Derek Walker there. And Derek said one day, he said, yes, you can engineer, but I think you've got the ability, skills to take on the management side. Is that something you're interested in doing? And I was, I guess, attracted enough to a new challenge that I said yes. And so then, got into the management side of the business. And I mean, Alex, as you know, is on some occasions during those 16 years, I was wearing both the management hat and the engineering hat, and kind of making the best of both worlds. And Derek, as a good Scotsman, was getting, 2 jobs for one salary. So we were both happy.
So I have some friends that are Scotsmen. Is there a good Scotsman? Besides Derek?
There's a cheap Scotsman, yeah.
How about this guy over here?
Mark, why are you waving here? I don't know what this is about.
McSporin?
My last name's McSporin. So
Rob, don't make him choke in his drink. Holy smoke.
So Rob, would it be fair to say that your time at Derek Walker Racing is where you really became multi-dimensional as far as the motorsports business goes?
I would say that was the beginning of, yes, keeping my my hand in, or my interest in, on the engineering side. I mean, at the end of the day, I started off was basically because I love of designing things, and designing race cars was really why I first got involved. But I think, when you get into the management side, at the end of the day in racing, right, you're solving problems, making decisions often without all of the information, but with the best information you have in the time available. And I think that applies both, as a track engineer or a crew chief, and it also applies on the management side. I think the additional challenge or dimension when you get into the management side is it's not quite as black and white, right? You make a change on the race car because you're trying to improve the performance, and you go up on the front spring or make a bar adjustment or something, and 2 or 3 laps later, the driver tells you you're a hero or a zero pretty quick. There's a lot more gray. There's a certain French Canadian that you and I have both worked with that does that. And
he may say that once. Yeah,
both love him for
enough.
it. So
we'll probably touch on that a little later.
Yeah, I thought you might touch on that at some point. Yeah. I think when you're on the management side, right, it's a lot more gray, and you've always got to keep an eye on the short-term decisions, but you've also got to be cognizant of the fact that you're making decisions, long-term health of the company, long-term commitment to people, and so on. You're still problem solving and trying to, have good solutions, but there are more dimensions to consider.
Yeah, that's awesome. With your experience in IndyCar in particular, and before we move ahead, just one thought that came to my mind that our listeners would probably like to we haven't got enough time to talk about it all, but, thinking back, you were involved during that whole IndyCar, Champ Car, IRL 2 at a time, and then now back to where we are now with IndyCar. I mean, man, there was, as a fan following that and a friend of Alex's, and not having any particular ties at that time, it was so crazy. But man, you endured all that.
Yeah, endured's a good word for it, Alex.
Yeah.
It really is, because you look at where the sport was in 1995 before all that started, and then 2008 when reunification happened. But fortunately now we're in a reasonably healthy place, but we all pretty much managed to kill it off in the interim, and in some ways fortunate to still be doing what we all love and to have come out the other side of it.
Yeah, it could have ended pretty quick during that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Rob, you left Walker, and in 2010 you became part of the newly formed FAZZT Racing with ownership from Ozzie Frudenberg and Jason Priestley, with Alex Tagliani as the driver. This is also, I think, when you met our co-host here, Alex Nagy. So I have to ask, what were your thoughts when Tagliani wanted to bring the stock car guy from Canada?
Easy, Mr. Rob.
Well, I actually don't remember Tagliani saying too much about Alex's background at the time. It was just, hey, I've got this guy that I trust him as a spotter. He's really good. And
Did he tell you had never spotted before?
Alex was part owner, so it's like, hey, Alex, whatever you want to do, man, it's fine, really. I'm good. To be honest, Mark, it was only after I started working with Alex and had a chance to hang with him a little bit that I really got to know him and know of all of his capabilities and skills. And as I say, there was some trying times over the fast years, and so it was good to have some guys with some cool heads and some good sounding boards around to help navigate the choppy waters on that one.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of polite there. That's awesome.
I was hoping he'd tell a few stories, but that's okay.
It was definitely an interesting season in 2010. It was my first exposure, like you said, Rob, to IndyCar, and I know, crew chief for TAG in the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series at the time. He kept saying, we're going back IndyCar racing. When that happens, I sat in the bus at Montreal. I think you might have been on one of the conference calls, and he was kind enough to invite me in. Mr. Aziz was with us, and I can't remember who else, but it was, just trying to get that team off the ground for 2010, and that's why I say about the Walker experience being so important, because, man, like you, I mean, I met you and I was part of that team for about 15 minutes, and I realized that none of it would have happened without your experience and your professionalism. I can tell you that. You know what? It all came together really quick, man. For a little team, we made a little bit of noise, to be honest. I mean, our stuff looked good. We ran good. I think that we exceeded expectations at times. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate. I've had many great experiences over the time in racing, but if I think of the things I'm most proud of, is FAZZT's one of them for sure, if not the one I'm most proud of. I mean, we started with a clean sheet of paper, and as you say, small team, and qualified on the front row in Brazil for the race in Brazil. We're competitive in 2010, many places that we probably shouldn't have been. Competitive at Indy, and can't remember, we qualified 7th or something that first year at Indy. Ran with the lead pack, obviously on pole the following year in 2011. And as you say, I think we look good. I mean, we had some great people, right? I mean, whatever you do in racing, it's all about having the right people. So yeah, it was a great experience, largely due to the caliber of people that we were able to attract and put together.
I agree. And, I look back at it now and, fortunate enough to meet you, but I'm still friends with all the guys from that team, whether it's Kiwi, Mike, Mac, whoever. we still chat once in a while on Facebook or Messenger, and whenever we get a chance to cross paths, whether it's Toronto, Indy, or whatever. But, you know, all those guys, that team we did so well with so little because, like you say, the people. And, man, I cannot believe the people you brought together in a short period of time, because those guys weren't just discards. I'll tell you that. I've learned that now. You know, you had some of the best in all the different areas, man. They were rocking.
Yeah, I think, you know, the thing that was unique there is that as we built it, we didn't rush out, right? And like, hey,
I got to listen in case he listens. I got to mention Darksy, my roommate in Japan. I better mention Darksy.
When I see him, I'm going to tell him you forgot him, and we edited it in later on.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Didn't expect it.
But no, I think one of the things that was cool there, right, is as we hired people, everyone we hired was word of mouth recommendation from someone else, right? So like, you know, Donnie Oldenburg was one of the first as the crew chief, and he's like, you know, I've got to have Phil. Phil's my number one guy, right?
Oh, so you get Phil and Donnie, yeah. I seen Donnie at Indianapolis at the
and you know, Kiwi, Brendan, you know, Robert Gouet. I mean, all those people I knew from Derek's, from Walker. And it just expanded from there, right? Kiwi knew Mike Miller from Fernandez, so he came from Fernandez, and I think that's why the bonds were all so strong. Is that right? They're all friendships, right? Going to work every day was like going to work with your friends, and you know, I think when there were troubled times, that was part of what motivated us all, or certainly motivated me, was that you weren't going to let your friends down. You were going to dig deep and whatever it took to say, make sure you're a good friend to everyone that was a good friend to you.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great time for sure. And, you know, we talked about team being small. I just got to put this in here because I never really complained about it at the time, because as a new guy, I really didn't have much say. But I realized pretty quick we were a small team. I thought we were pretty big time because, you know, we had fancy stuff and we looked good, and Rob Edwards was heading us up, and I thought, holy smokes, we're big time. But then where I realized we were maybe a little step behind was, as you know, all you guys in IndyCar have these Honda Cubs, little scooters that, you know, spotters use them going back and forth to the tower to get ready for practice or race time or whatever. Well, for whatever reason, the first while I kept leaving the paddock at the same time with the Penske guys. So at that time, and, you know, your fearless leader now, Roger Penske, what a great guy. You know, he would leave, and Rick Mears was spotting for Elio at the time. Yep. So he'd leave. Him and Rick, of course, you know, I don't tell you, they're like this, right? Glued together all the time. And him and Rick would go, and I'm leaving at the same time. It seemed to happen 6 times that year. And their scooters are chrome from one end to the other. I mean, the tanks, they started them up, and I thought they had a 427 Chevrolet in them. And, of course, Rick Mears and Roger Penske only do things for one reason, right? To win. Well, I was like a lap down every time we went a crowd. And they get up there, they're having a hot dog and a pop, and I'm getting up the stairs finally to join them in the spotter stand. And I thought, you know what, we're a tick behind in the scooter department. But that's when I realized we were maybe not quite as strong as those guys.
So Darks wasn't even looking after you then either then?
No.
Alex, are you telling me that you used to drive a scooter?
Rob hasn't got time for that story, Scooter McSpine. Yeah. I'll phone him later and tell him about that.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got better things to do. Yeah. Okay, so Fast merged with Smith for the 2011 season. And Alex, from what you've told me, 2011 proved to be a pretty crazy season with some real highs and definitely some lows.
Yeah, it was. Rob talked about the people, and really we all went at the same time, Rob. And, you know, we're not going to get into this, but Rob, this is where all his time at Walker's paid off, because he had to find us a home, to be honest, and merge with somebody to keep viable for whatever reasons, financially and others. You know, there we are in 2011, merged up with Sam Schmidt, who, of course, got some great history. And, man, we came out of the gates running that year for sure. And like you said, we had some great times. I mean, we're at the Indy 500, like Rob said. Tag wins the pole. Big day for all of us. I remember being on pit road with Joe Atkins. Rob, you know, you were too. Everybody, we were all pretty tight. pretty wound up. And Joe, you know him, how he talks. He's like, Nagy, you got to find us a bar. If we win this poll, I'm renting a whole bar. I said, Joe, I live where you live in Southern Ontario. I don't know what bar to get. And I thought, I'm going to be off the hook here, man, because, I mean, we're going to win the poll. Come on. Like, I mean, we thought we'd hoped we were going to win the poll. We get into that. I think it was a Fast 9 at the time. Is that what it was initially? And sure enough, man, we win the poll. Joe he is over the moon. That same 500, Dan Weldon in the Herta car was an affiliated team with us, correct?
That's correct. Yep. We basically tags and as you say, Dan Weldon with Bryan Herta and Townsend Bell. We ran all three cars.
Right, Townsend too. That's right.
You know, all three cars qualified in the first, I think, 2 rows, and and Dan won the race, and was just Indy 500 was one of the best, and I'm pleased you mentioned Joe Atkins because
I love that guy.
You know, without I mean, it's a Canadian show, right? You got to mention Joe, but I mean, you know, we wouldn't have got from 2010 to 2011 without Joe, and you know the story you tell there about pole day at the Indy 500 and so on. I mean, happy for all the boys, super happy for Tags, happy for Sam, but Joe Atkins. That was for me personally. That was for Joe Atkins because we wouldn't have been there without Joe.
Yeah, well, I mentioned you pulled all the strings, you made contacts, you tried to make that whole thing with Sam happen, but that doesn't come for free, right? And Joe definitely, he sold the company now, but give him a plug, Bowers and Wilkins. What a great company. And what a great guy, man. I can't wait to see him again. But so that year, then we leave there with the 77 car and we win the pole at Texas. Crazy. Yep. 2 in a row, right? And we were flying pretty high for sure. And then, overall, we had a good season. I mean, we ran good. I really think that we thought we should have won a race. We didn't. And that was disappointing. But it was a heck of a year for sure. And, before we move on, I can't help but talk about the season ender. We go to Vegas. Again, Joe, there was that bonus money to start from the back. I think how it was structured, right? 100,000 to win, was it, Rob? If you come from the back,
it was $1 million to win from the back.
$1 million. I'm sorry,
and
that was geared
from the back.
And why was Dan the chosen one? Was it because he won the 500?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. So the Indy 500 winner come to Vegas. He starts from the back, wins, he gets $1 million.
Right through the field.
And that might have been the biggest field in years besides a 500. Would we have 34 cars or something that day? Something like that. It was in the 30s, which was crazy, right, for an IndyCar oval track race. And, so, Dan's our teammate. He's in the 77 that day, right? And both sponsored by Bowers and Wilkins. Again, Joe made that happen for the most part, I believe, as far as supporting that second car for that race. Everything's, we're in Vegas. It's the finale. We got big plans, of course, post-event. We're into about lap 18. I'm up in the spotter stand spotting for Tag with my buddy Packy Wheeler, spotting for Dan. Teammates, and lap 18, there's that big wreck. And, me and you probably haven't talked about this, I don't think, much since the time, but I think it's, enough time's passed now, we can probably bring it up. Big wreck, Dan got airborne, got into the catch fence, and it's like the whole world stopped there for a while. And we're up in the spotter stand. We're waiting, we're trying to call down to you guys. And of course, rumors start swirling, people saying they're getting texts from whoever, and all us spotters were up there banding together and, hoping everybody was okay. Then we couldn't get hold of you guys. And of course, because you're talking to everybody and trying to sort through stuff and see what's going on. And anyways, we get the call. I think it was, I forget who phoned me and told me the news that Dan had died, and Packy was with me, and I didn't say a word. He looked at me, man, he just dropped to the ground. We'd lost Dan, and Packy he felt terrible. I couldn't even imagine being a spotter for that. Yeah, it was a tough day. You want to talk about that a little bit?
It's a tough day. I mean, be real candid with you guys. I've tried to blocked most of it from my mind. I mean, you talk about 2011, right, and the highs and the lows, and yeah, Indy was the high, and Vegas was the low, and not much to say really. It was a dark day for all.
Yeah, with such a great year. I know we really thought. I think Tag started in the top 5 that day, and Dan was running good, of course, but he had to start at the back no matter what. And I thought, I think as a team, man, we were so pumped up because we all felt that we had a great chance to, we didn't know what was going to happen when, in our minds, what was going to happen when Dan had to make a decision on Tag for the win, because we were both that good that day. And anyways, unfortunately, we didn't get to that point. And yeah, crazy, crazy day. Never forget it. And like you say, I haven't talked that much about it. I talked to Mark about it just prior to us getting in touch with you, and he couldn't believe it because I again, like you, I never shared it with, we don't talk about it a lot, right? And but I just thought it'd be cool just to pay some respect to Dan, his wife, and his boy there, his kids. And I guess why I brought that up, Rob, is in our industry we know it's dangerous, and we've seen some horrific wrecks, and we've seen some people lose their lives. And then when your teammate loses their life, man, it sure changes stuff, doesn't it, for a little bit?
Yeah, I think it does, because, be it driver or the guys on pit road or anything, right? It's all one team, it's all one group of guys, and it's relationships, right? And you're also dependent on each other, and so yeah, you feel it, right? You feel it big time. Is right talking about it now, and it's like you still feel it. It's that sport has a lot of highs and lows, and they're the lows for sure.
Yeah, and we kind of summarized that year for sure, highs and lows.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, thanks for taking a moment to share a little bit about your feelings there. Obviously, very difficult time. To move on a little bit forward here, in 2015, you started where you are currently with Andretti Motorsports, where, as we mentioned in the beginning, that you're the Chief Operating Officer. Can you give us a quick overview of responsibilities, Rob?
Sure. It's a big organization, or big for a race team. We're about 160 people. Michael's obviously the president and CEO, and JF Thorman is the business manager, looks after the business side of the team, and all of the the race operations and so on all fall under me. And so that's that's making sure that we're competitive across all of the series that we're involved in. It's logistics of how we get from A to B. It's making sure we got the right people, because as we highlighted throughout the call, it's a people business. It's about making sure that we've got the right engineering tools. Back to what we said about things you learn from Scotsman during your life. Make sure
don't pump them up. Don't pump them up.
Don't pump them up. All right.
If it's not Scottish, it's crap.
Let me put it this way. The one thing that I might have learned from Scottish people over the years then is that, make sure that you're spending the money in the right place and so on. And so, yeah, it's, it's like any race team. It's just, right, it's bigger. So there's more people, there's more interpersonal relationships to deal with, right? I mean, it's like people say, right, when you have one child and then you go to 2 children, it's not twice as much work, it's 3 times as much work, right? So you get to that number of people, right? There's a lot of interpersonal relationships and that you have to manage, and people in racing don't tend to be shy, retiring types. They tend to be, pretty competitive and pretty driven. And so you've got to keep them all driving in the right direction. I always contrast my role with if I was Chief Operating Officer at Ford or General Motors or something, right? And probably if I was at Ford or General Motors, I'm just hoping that enough people turn up for each shift so I can put my cars together. I think in racing, right, it's like conducting an orchestra. You've got a bunch of talented, motivated people, and you're trying to make sure they're all playing together at the same time and playing the same song so that it sounds and comes out the way it's meant to, and basically responsible for all of those operations across all of the different series that we're racing in at the moment.
Yeah, it's and you have several teams, Rob, that are overseas, right? And that long distance feeling must be pretty tough. Again, you have good people over there.
Yeah, it is, and the relationships with all of those teams are different, right? So, our Formula E team, which is based in Banbury in the United Kingdom, is a wholly owned part of the mothership, if you will. So that's under Michael's ownership, and so that group are direct reports into us, and there's about 15 or 16 guys working out of that facility. Again, yes, got a great manager, Campbell Hobson, that runs that group, and sometimes we have daily contact, sometimes we talk once or twice a week, but as you say, a self-contained group. With the supercar team in Australia, it's a little bit different because it's a joint venture between Ryan Walkinshaw and Zach Brown and Michael, and so we got involved down there 3-4 years ago now. So there was an existing team, existing infrastructure. So that's self-managed, if you will. And, we don't have direct management of that program. We have, monthly, what you'd call steering meetings or steering groups. But, the day-to-day running of that business is not driven from Indianapolis at all. And then the Extreme E series that we're just starting in for 2021.
I wanted to ask you about that there. So Rob or Mark, so Extreme E is a new SUV electric series, right?
Yeah, wow. It's basically, if you imagine, it's sort of cross between Formula E and Rallycross. So we're taking Formula E type powertrains and putting them in certainly for this year a standard SUV type chassis, and they're going to go race at 5 different venues around the world, sort of highlighting climate change and issues with climate change. Cars are all getting loaded up onto a boat and traveling around the world on a boat. So, in that case, it's a joint venture between United Autosports in the UK and ourselves. And again, unique management of that. So, for me and the guys in Indianapolis, that's more of a steering function than a direct management. But then everything out of Indianapolis, so the IndyCar program, which is the full season entries, the regular or the extra cars that we run at the 500, the Indy Lights program, and new for us this year is LMP3 as well. So there's plenty going on.
Yeah, wow. That's I thought I had it rough here. Holy smokes. Before I talk about some successes that Andretti, since you've been there, you mentioned Ford and Chevrolet. I just want to give you an opportunity, should you not be mentioning Honda?
Well, I would have mentioned Honda, but Honda have no trouble getting people show up, so it's fine.
There it is. Always professional. So just quickly. So I know Andretti, they've won different stuff before you got there, but a couple in particular that caught my eye. You won the 500 in 16 and 17, a couple Indy Light championships since you've been there, and all the other stuff you've done. You can touch on that a tick, but 16 and 17. I'm looking back. We met in 2010, 16 and 17. I don't recall being the spotter for either of those cars, so I still don't have a ring. And do you have enough hands?
What are you doing in May this year?
If I can cross the border, hopefully going to Indy.
Come on down.
I'll phone Roger, see if I can get a gig or somebody, Ganassi or somebody. Holy smokes. But it must have been pretty cool winning those championships.
16 and 17 were great, and we came so close again in 18 as well. Sorry, 19.
Correct.
Right. Close in 18, but close in 19. Yeah, it's a magical place, and it's a magical day when you win, but there's only one winner, so you gotta be on your A game all day long to make it happen for sure.
I could only imagine. I know how we felt in 10 or 11 winning the pole. I would have thought we won the 500. So yeah, no, that must have been pretty cool for sure. Okay, so 2021, crazy time, of course, trying to manage through all this. I know me and you talked about this on the phone the other day, and I guess in particular, just talking about IndyCar, which most of our listeners will have reference to. So I see so far that you have Rossi and Herta signed. Is that right?
They're the ones we've announced, but we're a multi-car team again this year. We think there are benefits in being multi-car teams, and I think you see Penske running 4 cars in 21. You see Ganassi running 4 cars in 21. I think people have seen Mike's vision for that, and I guess in that one, right, everyone's following our lead, and I think with a spec car, you work very hard to find small gains in lots of areas, right? And you're trying to optimize something that you're given, as opposed to perhaps when you started, Alex, and maybe when I started, where you could actually design something and make an advantage that way. Right now, you're being given something, you got to optimize it, and so to have the engineering resource that you need to do that, you really need to spread that across multiple programs. Even be it hardware or be it software and sim tools and so on. And so, that really drives the multi-car team approach. And as I say, we'll be following that route again in 2021, and, really applying that same template to our Indy Lights program as well. I think we see the same benefits there, and we tend to run the Indy Lights program in the image of the IndyCar program with, the multi-car team, 4 cars, open book between all the drivers, and use that to push the whole team as the whole team forward and make the breed stronger. Yeah.
One name I see missing, and you can tell me to be quiet or you can't say anything right now, but a mainstay at Andretti is Hunter-Reay, but I see he's not listed yet.
Ink ran out on the typewriter. It's coming.
Oh, you're just waiting for and it's tough to get stuff these days, right? Shit's all behind.
It is. I'm going down to the office supply store as soon as we get done here.
Could you? That'd be good. I'll be watching tomorrow.
Okay.
What about our old Canuck friend,
our boy
James Hinchcliffe? What's he going to do this year?
I think he wants to drive, doesn't he?
That's what I heard.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
And moving on, Alex.
All right. No, I didn't know if I'd get that for Hunter-Reay or not, but anyways, glad to hear that. And just one more thing I've got.
The ink shortage isn't driver specific, Alex. You know that, right?
No, I understand, buddy.
Ink shortage,
I understand. And just quickly before we wrap up here, I think we talked about this privately, but 2020 being a challenge, what a shitty time for Mr. Penske to invest. But with Roger buying the Speedway and buying the NTT IndyCar Series, none of us have seen the fruits of his labor for sure with the pandemic and all. But how much has that, and how much of that is going to have an impact moving forward? And, I know Jay Fry's still there, and I think he's been great for the series too. So just, Roger in particular, but those two gentlemen in general, I think that, man, in good hands.
Yes, the ship's in good hands, and never did it need to be so more than this year, right? And I think,
right.
From an operational standpoint, I think Jay does a fantastic job. It's difficult, right? Because you've got 9 teams or 10 teams all phoning up saying, "Hey, Jay, we need this. Hey, Jay, can we do this?" Right? And I think, right, we're fortunate because he's been a team owner. He's seen it. I don't know if you've worked with him or not, but right, he's seen it from your side.
Well, I was going to mention that you're talking the guy up. I just want to make sure everybody understands he did come from the stock car side, right?
Yeah, but Alex, he came across. He's not there now, so.
Fair enough. We won't talk about it.
But no, Jay does a great job. But Jay without Roger behind him, right? Particularly this year. I mean, we may not all be sitting there chatting like we are this afternoon without Roger Penske taking that ownership in the Speedway and in the series, because he clearly, Penske Corporation clearly have the financial muscle and the smart people and the infrastructure to help us all, weather these current times. And, you talk about seeing the fruits of Roger's labor. If you're able to apply for that spotting job at the Speedway in May this year, you'll actually get to see a lot of hard work that's happened and a lot of improvements at the Speedway since Roger bought it. And I think, I don't know for sure, but I think one of his regrets on 2020 was the fact that he didn't get to share that with everyone.
I'm sure it was.
I think he has a huge amount of pride in the Speedway and that purchase of the Speedway. And I think he's made fantastic improvements. I think there's more to come. And I think he's excited to share that with people. And if for no other reason than that, and for another Andretti victory, they're two really good reasons to be at the Indy 500 this year.
Well, remember that, buddy.
Alex, you better get your resume up to date.
Yeah, I know.
Well, Rob, we can't thank you enough for spending time with us today, especially this time of year when I'm sure you're incredibly busy getting everything ready to go very soon. It's been a true pleasure for me meeting you and having this conversation, and hopefully we can have you back on again at some point.
Sure, that'd be great. No, it's been great to meet you and been good to catch up with Nags again. He's the only guy that looks younger than when I met him last time. So
God,
it's doing pretty good.
Well, you see, I drew this little thing here to look like you. Our listeners can't see it, but this little goatee, and you notice my little goatee. I also
see you modeling yourself off of me and taking.
Yeah, but look, I even dyed it your color. Great.
Oh.
Thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it.
Great to catch up with you guys. Great to chat, and look forward to doing it again sometime.
Awesome. Good luck this year. See
Thanks.
you in May.
Yeah, the very best of luck.
Thank you.
Hey, Alex, what an amazing guest Rob was.
He is like one of my most favorite people I know, man. Wow, what a great show, eh, Mark?
Amazing.
So listen, how can our listeners interact with us online?
Well, first of all, you can find us now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you do, we would please ask you to subscribe. You'll always have the latest updates that way. And if you do like us, I think Apple Podcasts, we'd appreciate a 5-star review and a thumbs up wherever that's possible. And why don't you tell our listeners how they can join the conversation online?
Absolutely. For you on Twitter at WNSMark. For me at Nags_Alex. For on Facebook, our Facebook group, just simply search for Wingnut Sports. Instagram at Wingnut Sports. Website wingnutsports.com. You can also find our broadcasts there. Our episodes are also on our website. And you can email either of us at wingnutsports@gmail.com.
Yeah, and if you do visit our website at wingnutsports.com, don't forget to check out our show notes. We'll try to summarize the show the best we can, and there'll be links to our content and maybe even a surprise here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great guest today. Mm-hmm. This has been the Driver in Deep podcast with your hosts, Mark and Alex.
Hope to see you next time.
All right, you're clear. You're clear on this. You'll be on the inside of you. All right, you're clear.